Welcome to Redefining Real Estate. I'm Rylan.
And I'm Morgan. Expect a mix of education, humor, and authentic conversation as we explore all things real estate.
Let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome back to the Redefining Real Estate podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the cost that people do not tell you of owning a home. So Rylan, what are the top 3 costs that people don't usually tell you about?
Yeah, so the big ones would be things that insurance would cover. General maintenance things like costs in a home, and then unplanned costs that you maybe weren't expecting. Those would be probably the big 3 for sure.
Perfect. So I know that a lot of people have some reservations about these kind of costs. Like, okay, maybe I have enough money saved up to get into the house, but then what does it look like once I move in?
Right.
And I think that's the main reason I wanted to talk about this today, is to hopefully address some of those reservations that people have. But to go into some of the costs that you mentioned, what would you say is probably like, as someone who lives in a house and owns a house, what would you say is like the scariest that you would have to cover?
Probably the roof.
Okay.
Any type of like storm damage, trees falling on the house. Those would probably be the biggest things, just because that's kind of like your first like line of defense is your roof. And then obviously like big appliances, HVAC, things like that, and then foundation for sure would be like my top 3 scariest things I have to replace on my own.
Okay. So basically the things that are the most expensive.
Yes.
And the things that could impact you the most. Those are the things that would
For sure.
be scariest. Yeah, that makes total sense. The good thing is insurance does cover most of those things.
Correct. Yes.
So like I've had a lot of people tell me, especially first-time home buyers, say, I'd be concerned about having to replace the roof, or the roof is 10 years old. I'm concerned about having to replace that soon, which is a totally valid concern.
Right.
And also, that's why insurance exists, especially for our area where we have gotten hailstorms within the last 4 or 5 years. A lot of people took advantage of the damage that the hail made on the roof and were able to get, a new one covered by their insurance. That doesn't mean it was for free, but it does mean that instead of paying $10,000 for a roof, you're paying a deductible on your insurance, typically 1% of however much you are actually covering with your house. So if you have $300,000 worth of coverage, your deductible is likely to be around $3,000. So that's what you would pay, $3,000 instead of $10,000 for a new roof or any other potential damage that could have been caused.
Yeah, I think that's like a huge difference. Obviously, I mean, $7,000 isn't anything to just toss around. That's one of the many benefits of having good coverage, is because you can do things like that and you're not going to be out of pocket who knows how much more if your insurance company like falls through for whatever reason it may be. So definitely good things to consider.
Have you had any experiences with insurance companies?
Not as of right now. Fingers crossed that I don't anytime soon. My roof was replaced like right before, I can't even tell you, but it's not old, so I haven't had any damage yet. Everything still looks good. I was actually just checking it yesterday. I was up there cleaning gutters, and another good general maintenance thing to do. But up there cleaning gutters yesterday, just kind of checking out the shingles. Everything looked good. So not that I'm a licensed inspector, but
right.
Yeah, no, I have not had any good nor bad experiences quite yet.
Well, I will say there are a lot of changes that have happened in the insurance industry recently. Like, insurance costs have gone up substantially for most people.
Right.
So if anybody out there is listening and you need a good insurance contact, let us know. Hit us up. We have some people we can refer you to that can shop around for you and find you the best deal for what you're looking for. But on that note, you mentioned other big ticket items like HVAC. Mm-hmm. So typically, if your HVAC stops working, that's not necessarily something you would file an insurance claim for, because usually it's not going to cause damage to the house. It's like, okay, this part broke or whatever. But we do usually get home warranties for our clients whenever they purchase their home. Typical in our market to get like a 1-year home warranty from the seller when you purchase. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't had any clients had to like use that quite yet. All of the times or previous times that we were doing inspections, we made sure the HVAC was in good working condition. just because, like, had the same conversation of, like, it doesn't actually damage the home, so it's kind of hard to have someone, like, compensate for that. But they did want to ensure that it had all, like, it was all functioning, it was all good. And we haven't really, or I haven't found anything within my clients of any sort of HVAC issues, just because the inspections we did, we ensured that everything was functioning properly and the unit was still good for many more years to come. So I haven't really had any too much personal experience with that. But what about you?
I haven't had many clients use their home warranty, which is a good thing. But it's always, there for peace of mind.
Right.
I think that most people find that, once you get through that first year of, like, you just spent a large chunk of your savings, and you're still, like, figuring out the cost of actually owning the home, you'll find, like, okay, I think that if something were to break, I'd rather just hire someone to repair this one specific thing versus, like, having the whole thing replaced.
Right.
And that's a more likely scenario of, like, just having one part replaced or having, a smaller repair cost versus actually having to spend $8,000 to replace your HVAC system inside and out.
Yeah, that'd be rough covering that all by yourself. But what other big ticket things would insurance cover?
So really, when you think about insurance, just think about, like, what's going to potentially damage the home. So we talked about hail damage from a roof perspective.
Yeah.
But, like, say there's any sort of natural disaster that comes through, whether it's like a tornado, hailstorm,
Right.
Any extreme weather that causes damage, you can potentially file a claim for that, as long as you can prove that the natural disaster was the effect of it. But that means, like, a lot of people with hail, for example, like, if it broke their windows or if it dented their gutters or if it dented the siding on the home or damaged it in any way, like, it doesn't just cover the roof, it's like anything.
Right.
Any sort of damage. So besides that, when we're thinking, like, hot water heaters, sometimes they can leak and explode and things like that, or you may have a water leak, lines freeze, and it may flood portions of the house. That is something that can potentially get covered, but it also depends on, like, okay, do I want to pay the repair cost or do I want to file a claim with my deductible?
Right.
Depending on how much it is, because we use that example, say $3,000, but, if you have a $600,000 insurance policy, maybe your deductible is 1%, maybe it's 2%, and depending on what your situation is, it may be cheaper to actually just get whatever it is repaired and not have to have, like, a claim on your insurance account.
Yeah, I had a kind of a unfortunate experience with that. The HVAC in my home right now is newer, and the guys that installed it, one of the drain lines wasn't, like, perfect. They just reused one of them and caused it to get clogged, and it overflowed in the attic. And one day I came home and looked up, and water was dripping on me, and it was a very frustrating point in time. And I had it replaced, and it wasn't super expensive to do. Luckily, the handyman that I used, he was able to get rid of all the damaged drywall and roof. What's that called up there?
Like the decking above the ceiling?
Yes, yeah,
And
up in there, and then he had to remove a lot of insulation just because it was so wet and it was holding so much moisture. But he was able to, get everything out of there, check everything else around it, and it was hard because from an insurance perspective, it was on me because I didn't maintain my drain line because you're supposed to clean those out, However, it was because of the way that it was ran that it clogged so quickly. Anyways, it was a whole big deal, but it wasn't super expensive to fix, and I just went that route versus going the insurance route. I probably could have fought a lot more if I wanted to, but ended up just being simpler, just repair it myself, and then just clean out those lines more often. So, just something to kind of take into consideration.
Well, I think that kind of leads us to our next category of just, like, general maintenance. I think that for a lot of people, going from renting especially to owning a home, there can be a huge difference, because when you're renting, even though, yes, you may be taking care of simple repairs here and there, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, like, if something big were to happen, I don't have to pay for it. Like, that's not my responsibility.
Right.
So what other general maintenance items do you think is important? I know you mentioned cleaning out your HVAC drain lines. I know people have recommended like putting like a cap full of vinegar like
Yes.
into the drain line.
Yes, that can help too.
To clear them out. But is there anything else that you think would be important for people to know?
I think ensuring your gutters are clean. I've kind of been experiencing that recently where, all the leaves are falling off the trees and then it's raining. So it's kind of getting those gutters super compact. Keeping those cleaned out will just prevent, your gutters to overflow into your flower beds or whatever's underneath. And then evidently like just flooding all right in there. And then next thing you know, like your slab is just soaked, That'd be another big one. And then trying to think off the top of my head, all the things. Replacing air filters to help your AC. That's always good.
Yeah, that's a hard one for me specifically because I have like 2 return vents and one is really high up, probably 12 or 15 feet. Like it's on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And it's like in my living room. So I have to move furniture and like get a ladder.
All the things.
Yeah. And every time my dad comes over, he's like, you need to change that thing out. It's like one of those. So I know a lot of people recommend, I think on the packaging, they say every 3 months. Something like that.
Yeah.
But like you could do it every 1 month, depending on like the type of filter. I think it just depends.
Yeah. So my filter is right by my back door, so it gets a little bit dirtier faster because in and out there's more just particles in the air. So I change mine like once a month just to make sure that like I mentioned, it's a newer HVAC system. So the last thing I would want to do is neglect it right now, and I'm definitely trying to keep it nice so whenever I do go to sell the home that there's no like any damages or anything like that. So I do mine once a month, but I think that maybe, sometimes a little bit overkill depending on who you are. So
Yeah, well, and people say that HVAC systems can last for 10-ish years, I think is like usually the lifespan. And the longer that you are making sure to maintain things and doing preventative maintenance, the longer you can make its lifespan lasts. I know at my first house, I'm pretty sure that outside HVAC unit is literally like, what's this year, 2025? I'm pretty sure it's from like the 80s, like
That's
for
awesome.
sure.
That's awesome.
It's still running. The inside unit and furnace is like newer, but like
Okay.
the outside one is like
Still kicking.
Still kicking.
That's awesome.
So that's awesome. And I think that people also need to realize like when we're in negotiations, sometimes they're like on the cusp of like, okay, it could go out any day now.
Yes.
But it could last another 15 years. Like
Yeah.
it just depends on how you plan to maintain it.
For sure. Another big one that I was kind of thinking on was landscaping too. Keeping your trees off of your roof is a super big deal. Not only just because the wind could scratch into your shingles and then, next thing you know, you have to repair your roof, but also for termite damage, that's very easy. Carpenter ants, all those things that could destroy your home or at least just have to make you spend money to repair it. That's definitely a big thing. And then, keeping your bushes trimmed, your grass cut down nice and neat, kind of just helps prevent whatever you want to call it, like as far as just, snakes or bugs or whatever it is coming
Right.
closer to the home. Definitely a big deal for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know something that I always tell my clients about when we're out and looking at homes is like typically a pest inspector will look around the edge of the foundation. They want to see like an inch or so of the actual slab when they're walking around the house, because otherwise it could create areas where pests or rodents could have access or other animals could have access into the house. And so making sure that that's something that you can see, or otherwise thinking about ways you can get that landscaping further away from the house.
Right.
Because ideally you want to be able to see some of the slab. You want to create an effect for drainage to where it's like sloping away from the house. And ultimately making sure that, you mitigate any potential issues that you would have with the foundation with those drainage measures.
For sure. Yeah, drainage is definitely a big thing. You never want any like standing water near the home, obviously, just because, who knows what that could cause. It's always good to, whenever it is raining outside, typically people like to stay indoors, but it's always good to peek out and just see how your home does do when it's, having to drain all that water off. In my backyard, there's like a little river that goes along the fence, which I back up to a floodplain, so that kind of makes sense.
Right.
All the drainage goes down, which is nice. Hopefully it doesn't ever rain too much, but yeah, I think drainage is a huge thing to focus on. Typically, newer neighborhoods have all the street drains, so always good.
Yeah, if you're looking in older neighborhoods specifically, I think there are some things to just keep in mind with drainage because obviously houses built in like the 50s and 60s didn't usually come with gutters to like
Right.
keep standing water away from the foundation. So if it doesn't have gutters, that's always a good thing to budget in to eventually add. And then same thing with, maybe French drains or potential landscaping that can move the water away from the house. And even like houses built in the 80s, there are some neighborhoods here that still continue to struggle with drainage issues. One that comes to mind specifically is like the Oaks over behind Bryan High and Walmart
Yes.
off Briarcrest. Like that neighborhood is kind of known for having drainage issues. Not that it's like terrible and like people are having their houses flooded, but like in the streets, they're having to redo a lot of the drainage in that area. And the city has redone drainage like, in phases throughout multiple neighborhoods over the years. But I know I showed a house in there not too long ago to one of your clients when you were out of town, and it literally had like a storm drain in the backyard. So that was really interesting. It was one of the first times I've ever seen that. And of course, the yard's like graded all the way down to the storm drain that's in the middle of the yard. So yeah, that's definitely something for people to keep in mind.
I remember looking at that survey and I was trying to make sense of what was going on because I was out of town and I didn't see the big like slope. I just saw the huge like cut through in the middle of the survey and I'm like,
Yeah.
what is going on? Like, what is that? And then obviously in like the little key area, you could see there was like a storm drain. And so I was on the phone with my client and she was like, oh, it was so cool. And I was like, was there a drain like over there? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, awesome. So yeah, definitely interesting to see how they're trying to help that situation.
Yes, for sure. But with maintenance, I know we typically give our clients like a maintenance checklist that they can work on stuff on a monthly basis. It's like 4 or 5 things per month that they can keep in mind.
Yes.
Things that you've already mentioned, like changing out your air filter, checking certain things during different times of the year, just trying to be preventative versus waiting until something actually breaks. But I think as far as costs go with maintenance, I mean, the more that you can save up for maintenance things at your house, especially if it's older, the better. But I think on a yearly basis, I mean, if you were to change your air filters monthly, we'll say a 4-pack we'll say just $40. I don't know, because I think that can include, obviously the cheaper ones and even some of the more expensive filters.
Those are definitely some nice filters.
Yeah. So if you're changing them out every quarter, 4 of them would be 1 year. If you're changing them out more frequently, then obviously it'll be more. But we'll call it $150 for
Okay.
filters,
Yeah.
a year if you're changing them out every single month, and potentially doing other stuff, having someone come out and like check the system. Obviously that can be more. I know there's a local HVAC company that offers like preventative maintenance where they come and
Yes.
check. I think like twice a year they come out and check the unit, and I think they clean it off. And I think they have a contract for like $250 a year. So that's something for people to think about as far as costs go. But I think other things that typically break are going to just be, like you mentioned, appliances,
Yeah.
which a home warranty does cover those things. And home warranties typically range from, $600 to $700 a year. But if your appliances are newer and you have a warranty, like hopefully you'll be good for a while.
Right. Yeah. I haven't had anything break on me quite yet, but yeah, washer, dryer, fridge, those things are definitely something that could be a potential issue. And if you do have that home warranty or manufacturer warranty, all that's definitely good to have knowledge on as far as what would you do if it did go out. So
Yeah, I will say at least with appliances, you can find them usually pretty cheap on Facebook Marketplace. Like if you're okay with a secondhand appliance, but like also garbage disposals,
Yes. Yeah.
that's something of mine that broke recently. That's really annoying because it's like rusted out on the bottom, and so it's like leaking every time. So yeah, anything else you can think of for general maintenance costs though? Like, I think if someone were to put $1,000 away for like the tiny things, I think that would honestly be overkill for a year. But
Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, as far as like all the other things, I feel like more like preference,
Yeah.
like just cleaning the home, cleaning like random surfaces, like checking your light bulbs, things like that. But yeah, I mean, those would be like my big things for sure. But I think everything else after that would just be more like just, up to the owner if they want to do it or not.
Like if they wanted to upgrade something.
Yeah, like if they wanted to update a bathroom or something like that. Obviously, it's not like necessary, but something you can definitely do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know you touched on this a little bit earlier. You mentioned something about a floodplain, your house backing up to a floodplain, which I think leads us to taxes and insurance costs. I've seen a lot of people post, like a lot of realtors, newer realtors post things like, why rent when you can buy, and like, your payment's never going to go up. While yes, the loan amount, if you get a fixed rate loan, the payment that you pay for that portion will not go up. But
Correct.
the other, usually around half of your payment, is made up of property taxes and insurance, which can change. So have you had any clients have any experiences with like drastic changes, or like what has their expectations usually been?
They're typically prepared for it. They know that property taxes will go up or the values of the homes will go up, whichever one. They haven't really had too many issues as of now, but what's your experience been?
Well, with new construction specifically, it's really important that you have some sort of representation look over the loan worksheet that especially if you're using a preferred lender that they provide you. Because on that loan worksheet, sometimes they aren't including in the property taxes, like an estimated property tax for the house being complete.
Right.
Because typically the county will come in like the year afterwards. So your taxes can be much lower during your first year of ownership because you're only being taxed on like the empty lot, and then the next year they can go up substantially.
Right.
And luckily none of my clients have ever had that issue because we've always had that conversation. But I have heard horror stories of like friends of friends saying like, oh, well, we bought this house and like we didn't use a realtor or whatever, and like they never told us that it was going to go up like this, like we never expected it. And so that's something to consider. Like typically property taxes have gone up every year, but that doesn't mean like your payment goes up $500 a
Right.
month. That's more so like, maybe $50 or $100 depending on, how much your property costs. But
Yeah, that's definitely something to heavily consider, because I think that would be very easily overlooked, and you just see your payments pretty low and you're like, heck yeah, and the next thing you know, who knows what it'll jump to.
Right. And then same with insurance, which is kind of why I think it's important to like be good buddies with your insurance broker, because you want to make sure that they're shopping around your premium every single year if possible, because typically insurance has gone up like every year. You usually pay it on like a yearly basis though. So like if it goes up $500, that's spread over 12 months. So it's
Right.
not as big of an impact as property taxes could be.
You're right. Yeah, for sure.
So, all right. Well, is there anything else you can think of that would be an unknown cost?
Unknown cost, maybe like just plumbing issues. If something kind of like that, if something gets clogged and next thing you know, it bursts and you have water going everywhere. But other than that, that's more of kind of like an emergency thing, not necessarily just random stuff.
Right.
But that's kind of all I've got. Maybe if like a squirrel gets in the attic, that he can cause some mayhem. But,
Yes.
and then you got to either pay someone to go get it or you go get it, and
Yeah.
who knows what that would cause, more damage. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, the only other thing I can think of is just like pest control. If you can get on a quarterly plan, I would highly recommend that. Otherwise, at least twice a year or once a year, whatever you can afford. Typically, those services are around, 60, 70, $80 each time they come out. But this is, again, like preventative maintenance to try to make sure that you're not accidentally causing any damage, or that some other thing isn't causing any additional damage to your home that you're not aware of.
Yes, because they don't see it as your home; they see it as theirs. So,
Exactly.
yeah, pest control is great, exterior and interior. Definitely a lot more of a preventative thing, but if you don't see anything, that's a good thing. So,
Yes, for sure. Well, if you guys ever need any local contacts to any handyman, landscapers, pest control companies, anything of the sort, feel free to hit us up on Instagram. We have our social media links down below. And we would love if you gave us a follow and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any other real estate questions, feel free to email us or shoot us a DM. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you found something useful or at least had a good time listening.
Yeah, if you enjoy this episode, feel free to subscribe or share it with someone who might enjoy this content.
And if you have any questions or topics you want us to cover, reach out to us on Instagram. Everything will be linked below for you.